Go ahead.
Hi, this is Cameron Shell, and I am here with Grant Kalba, and we're going to talk to Grant today about why he loves being an entrepreneur. And Grant runs an organization called Kalba Corp Logistics. So Grant, thanks very much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. So we're here talking about being an entrepreneur, in particular being an entrepreneur in Calgary and what that's all about. Can you tell me why you started off and why you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but you know, I'm born and raised here in Calgary.
Yeah.
This is sort of the free spirit, shoot from the hip, make things happen, entrepreneurial capital of Canada, and certainly a leading center when it comes to entrepreneurs around the world. So I'm in a good environment to be an entrepreneur. Okay. The other part of my environment came from my father, who was an entrepreneur, self-employed, which meant he worked a lot. Okay. But there was, with that came the ability for him to have a lot more control over his destiny, to make decisions on the fly, to be creative, and do whatever it took to keep things going. So growing up in that kind of environment, it just sort of naturally brought me into it. Right in my early days, running my own disc jockey company way back in high school and college to pay for my education, you know, I all of a sudden realized that, you know, I can work for myself, make more money, and use that money to further myself down the road. I mean, it's just a natural formula that has carried me through my entire working life.
Okay. So as part of the ongoing series of, like, we love to interview entrepreneurs we like, right? And in particular, startup guys. And you've done some startups.
Yes.
And you're on to your next startup, which is called Kalba Corp Logistics.
Yes.
Can you tell us why you started it?
Well, like all my businesses, I have found or saw a need. I saw an opportunity in the marketplace, or a void that I could capitalize on, or that I could fill. Way back, well, in many years, I don't know how far you want to go back with all the different businesses that I've had. I've built businesses, I've sold them, or I've built them and they've run their course and I've shut them down. But most recently, when I talk about Kalba Corp Logistics, I saw a void in the marketplace as it pertains to the oil and gas industry, with the health and safety officers and safety people within large companies. And I saw that their purchasing of their personal protective equipment for their people was very disjointed, very lax. A lot of people were at risk, and these health and safety people just didn't want to deal with salespeople for individual companies. So what I've done here is I've taken that sales model, that traditional sales model, looked at it, and I said, you know what, I can turn that upside down. And instead of working for the suppliers and the manufacturers, why am I not working for the health and safety officers who are trained in health and safety and environment issues and training and schooling and risk assessment and risk minimization? That's what their skill is. They're not purchasing people. So I saw a void in the market. I've been able to get in there right away, and so far it's gone extremely well in the 2.5 months that I've been.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What are you finding your biggest challenge right now?
Getting to the health and safety people and getting them, getting their time. They're so busy, they're so stressed, they're on a treadmill that is going so fast that they need me, they want me, they need this kind of service, but they just haven't had a chance to get caught up on things. Also, with a lot of these companies, they move at a snail's pace. They've got a lot of different hoops to jump through, and I mean, I just did 2 RFPs last week, but that process does take a long time to the sales cycle is just slow.
What's the number one, or maybe even the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give entrepreneurs or people getting into a startup today?
Well, certainly there's risk. You've got to assess a risk and be willing to take it. That said, it's got to be a calculated risk. You can't go blindly into a business thinking it's a really, really good idea without doing a lot of homework beforehand. And when I started up my first internet business that I did in 1994, I had to go to libraries to get all the information on microfiche and things like that, to get all of my market research. And I spent weeks in libraries doing market research to see if this business was, if there was an opportunity there. Nowadays, all that information is readily available on the internet. but there's way more information.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to take a calculated risk. The second thing that I learned is that you've got to be willing to fail. And not everything is going to go great, and not everything is going to be right, especially when you're marching down a path that nobody has ever been down before. If you're buying a franchise or buying into a business that has already been operating for a number of years, all those lessons have been learned, and you're going to be sent off to Hamburger College or Coffee University so they can teach you how to run that franchise. But when you're marching to your own drum and you're breaking new ground, you are going to fail. And I've never lost money in business, but boy have I paid for one hell of an education. So there's that. Be willing to fail. And the third thing is, and this is a harder lesson for pure entrepreneurs, is take counsel. Take advice from individuals who you trust, who don't necessarily have a vested interest in whether you succeed or fail, but want to help you and are willing to help you and have the qualifications and some ideas and insight to make sure that they will give you the right information. And that's a lesson that I've learned over the years, that now I'm starting up Kelba Corp Logistics, and we've been in business now for a short period of time. I'm really looking for the kind of expert help that is available out there. It's there if people want to offer. So yeah, way back in high school, a buddy of mine came up to me and he said, "Hey, you know, you've got what it takes. How would you like to be Ralph the Dog for the Calgary Stampeders?" And this is, boy, in the late 70s actually, and this is when the Stampeders were the only game in town, long before the Flames ever came to town. And so I started performing as Ralph the Dog and had a certain measure of success as a professional mascot. Yeah. What a great job that was for $7 an hour. And so that was good. And like on my other businesses, I saw an opportunity. And the Flames came to town, and a friend of mine, very shortly after the Flames came to town and they were playing in the Corral, they were getting ready to move into the Saddle Dome. A friend of mine came to me and he said, "Have you talked to the Flames about a mascot?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, you better go talk to Al Coates, who was the PR director at the time." So I went down there, and because I had the success I was having with Ralph the Dog, I was able to get a meeting. And he slapped down a stack of proposals about this thick in front of me. And he said, "Okay, how does yours differ from anything we received so far?" So I sat there and I looked at him and I said, "Okay, I tell you what, I'll build it, I'll own it, I'll manage it, I'll take care of it. You get any phone calls for it, you get any complaints, you get any problems, get any success, anything like that, just pass it on to me. I'll take all the risk, all the responsibility for creating this character. And you pay me on a game-by-game basis to show up, and if it doesn't work after one game, after 2 games, after 6 games, you can let me go and you're not stuck with a $4,000 costume." And he said, "No risk?" And I went, "No risk. If it doesn't work, you're not stuck with it." And he said, "Okay, go ahead." So I went to the library and got some books on dogs, opened up a book on Siberian Huskies, built my costume in the basement, much to the protest of my friends and my family, because I was successful as Ralph the Dog. They thought I was crazy building my own mascot. So I built my own mascot in my basement and walked to the Saddle Dome on February 16th, 1984. And as I walked by the corral on the way to the Saddle Dome with this costume freshly glued and stitched in 2 garbage bags, as I walked there I realized I didn't have a name for this character. And I went, geez, you know, as I walked by the corral I went, wow, the Calgary Centennials play there, and they got a fan club called the Hockey Hounds. And the Hounds, Notre Dame Hounds in Saskatchewan is a storied hockey college. Hounds. I'm going to call him Hound. What goes with Hound? Ralph can't do that. He's our mayor. I went through a whole bunch of different names. And then I went, Harvey the Hound. So by the time I started at one side of the corral, I went, geez, I don't have a name. To the time I got to the other side of the corral, and the Saddle Dome was in sight, I had a name, Harvey the Hound.
Harvey the Hound.
And so they introduced me on February 16th, 1984. And I went and I sat down in the stands as play started, and a guy leaned over to me and he said, "Go to hell." And I immediately said, "It's going to be a lot tougher than I figured."
Wow.
And Harvey's been at every game ever since. And for 15 years, I worked as Harvey the Hound after working as Ralph the Dog for 4 years before that. And interesting enough, I still have the letter from North Hill Shopping Center firing me as Ralph the Dog because I was starting my own mascot, and I still laugh at it from time to time. But I built Harvey to a point where I was able to do it full time, where I was making money off merchandise, sponsorship, and appearance revenue. I owned the trademark and the rights until the Flames made me an offer I couldn't refuse in 1996, and then I stayed on for 4 more years, and then I got up one morning after a particularly tough game, and my eyes were red and bloodshot because of the sweat, and I was stiff and I was sore, and I was hurting quite a bit, and I stagger into the bathroom like I'm 90 years old, and I look in the mirror and I'm looking like crap, and I went, "Grant, you're going to turn 40. You spent 4 years as Ralph the Dog and 15 years as Harvey the Hound. You spent your entire adult life as a dog. It's time to do something else." So I retired.
Wow, that's amazing story.
It was good fun.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. So actually, I just want to. This is Cameron Chow with Grant Calba, and we just did an interview on entrepreneurs we like. And Grant, Harvey the Hound, and Ralph the Dog, these are all entrepreneurs that we actually love. Thanks for the story, Grant. That was great.
Thanks for allowing me to share it.
That's amazing.